The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the quiet suburban street as Lisa Johnson drove home after a 12-hour shift at Memorial Hospital. Her shoulders ached from being on her feet all day, and all she could think about was a hot shower and the leftover pasta waiting in her fridge. The radio played softly in the background, some pop song she half recognized but couldn't name. Lisa checked her rearview mirror out of habit and noticed a police cruiser a few cars behind her. She didn't think much of it until the flashing light suddenly turned on, and the siren gave a short, sharp wail. Her heart jumped a little. That instinctive reaction most people get when they see police lights, even when they've done nothing wrong. "What did I do?" she whispered to herself, scanning her memory for any traffic rules she might have broken. She hadn't been speeding. She'd used her turn signals properly. Her registration was up to date. Still, she pulled over carefully, putting on her hazard lights and stopping at a safe distance from the curb. Through her side mirror, Lisa watched the officer step out of his patrol car. Officer Tom Reynolds was not having a good day. Anyone could see that from the tight set of his jaw and the way he stomped rather than walked toward her car. What Lisa couldn't know was that Reynolds had just been passed over for promotion for the third time, or that he'd had a heated argument with his lieutenant that morning. The sun glinted off Reynolds' badge as he approached, hand resting near his holster in a way that seemed unnecessarily alert. Lisa rolled down her window and tried to smile politely, though a flutter of nervousness had settled in her stomach. "License and registration," Reynolds said without preamble, not even offering a greeting or explaining why he'd pulled her over. "Of course, officer," Lisa replied, keeping her voice steady and pleasant. She reached slowly for her purse on the passenger seat, making sure her movements were clear and visible. "May I ask what I did wrong?" Reynolds didn't answer immediately. He watched her with narrowed eyes as she retrieved her wallet and dug out her driver's license. The registration was in the glove compartment, and she made sure to tell him before reaching for it. "I'm just going to open the glove box to get my registration, okay?" she said, maintaining eye contact. Reynolds gave a curt nod, his expression unchanging. The small camera on his uniform recorded everything, though neither of them gave it much thought at that moment. Across the street, a young man named Raj was walking his dog when he noticed the police stop. Something about the officer's body language caught his attention, and he slowed his pace, watching the scene unfold with growing concern. He'd seen enough news stories to know that sometimes routine traffic stops could go wrong, especially for people who looked like Lisa, a black woman in her 30s with natural hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Everything seems to be in order," Lisa said, handing over her license and registration with a small, hopeful smile. "I'm just heading home from work. I'm a nurse at Memorial." Officer Reynolds took the documents without comment, his face a mask of professional indifference that didn't quite hide the simmering frustration beneath. He glanced at her scrubs, visible beneath her unzipped jacket. "Do you know why I pulled you over today?" he finally asked, his tone suggesting she should already know the answer. Lisa's brow furrowed slightly. "No, sir, I don't. I don't think I was speeding or breaking any traffic laws." Something in her tone, the simple questioning of his authority perhaps, seemed to trigger something in Reynolds. His jaw tightened, and a flush crept up his neck. "You made an illegal lane change back at the intersection," he said, though the dash cam footage would later show that no such violation had occurred, "and your taillight is out." Lisa's confusion was genuine. "My taillight? But I just had my car inspected last month. Everything was fine. Are you arguing with me?" Reynolds asked, his voice dropping dangerously low. On the sidewalk, Raj had stopped completely now, his dog sitting patiently at his feet. He pulled out his phone and, trying to be discreet, began recording. Something told him this wasn't going to end well. "No, officer, not at all," Lisa said quickly, sensing the shift in Reynolds' demeanor. "I'm just surprised. I'll get the taillight fixed right away." Reynolds stared at her for a long moment as if deciding what to do next. The radio on his shoulder crackled with dispatcher chatter, but he ignored it. "Step out of the vehicle," he said suddenly. Lisa blinked, caught off guard.
"Step out? Why?"
"I thought this was just about a taillight." "I said step out of the vehicle," Reynolds repeated, his hand now resting more firmly on his holster. "Now." Fear began to bubble up in Lisa's chest, but she tried to stay calm. "Officer, I'm happy to comply, but could you please tell me why I need to get out of my car for a taillight issue?" Across the street, Raj was now openly filming, and an elderly couple had paused their evening walk to observe the escalating situation. The woman clutched her husband's arm tightly. "Last chance," Reynolds said, his patience clearly gone. "Step out of the vehicle immediately or I will remove you myself." Lisa's hands trembled slightly as she unbuckled her seatbelt. "I'm coming out, officer." "Please, there's no need for—" She never finished her sentence. As she began to open her door, Reynolds suddenly reached through the window, grabbed her by the collar of her scrubs, and yanked her toward him. "What are you doing?" Lisa gasped, her hands instinctively going to her throat where the fabric was cutting into her skin. "I was getting out." "Please stop!" But Reynolds wasn't listening anymore. Something had snapped inside him. All the frustrations of the day, the years of feeling overlooked. The power he held in this moment. It all came to a boiling point as he pulled harder, forcing Lisa halfway out of the window. "Stop resisting," he shouted, though Lisa was doing nothing of the sort. She was simply trying to protect herself from being choked by her own clothing. Raj's hand shook as he continued filming, now dialing 911 with his other hand. "Hello? I need to report a police officer assaulting a woman during a traffic stop," he said urgently into the phone, giving the location. The elderly couple had also pulled out a phone and were recording now, the woman's face a mask of horror as they witnessed what was happening. Lisa struggled to breathe as Reynolds pulled her further through the window, the door handle digging painfully into her side. Her feet scrambled for purchase, knocking against the door panel. "Please," she wheezed, "I can't breathe." The door. Open the door. For a terrifying moment, her world narrowed to the desperate need for air and the pain in her throat. She couldn't understand how a drive home from work had turned into this nightmare. She had done nothing wrong, nothing at all. A car driving by slowed down, then pulled over behind the police cruiser. Two young women jumped out, both already recording with their phones. One shouted, "Hey, what are you doing to her?" Reynolds glanced over his shoulder, suddenly aware of the audience that had gathered. For a split second, doubt flickered across his face. Then his expression hardened again. "Stay back," he barked at the onlookers. "This is police business." But it was too late. Too many witnesses, too many cameras. Reynolds finally released his grip on Lisa's collar and yanked open her car door. Lisa fell forward, coughing and gasping for air, her hands going to her throat where angry red marks were already forming. "Hands behind your back," Reynolds ordered, pulling her roughly from the car and spinning her around. "What did I do?" Lisa asked between ragged breaths, tears streaming down her face. "Please tell me what I did wrong." Reynolds didn't answer. Instead, he snapped handcuffs around her wrists, cinching them painfully tight. The growing crowd of bystanders continued filming, their voices rising in protest. She wasn't resisting. "This isn't right." "I saw the whole thing." As Reynolds led Lisa to his patrol car, his mind was already racing ahead, thinking of how to justify what he'd done, how to twist this situation to protect himself. He didn't know that his body camera had captured everything, or that multiple witnesses had already uploaded their videos to social media, where they were beginning to go viral. He pushed Lisa into the backseat of his cruiser and slammed the door. Inside, she tried to steady her breathing and make sense of what was happening. 20 minutes ago, she had been thinking about dinner and a shower after a long day of helping others. Now she was handcuffed in a police car, her throat bruised, facing who knew what charges. What she couldn't know was that justice was already in motion. The videos were spreading, calls were flooding into the police station, and Officer Kim Patel was already responding to the scene as backup. A fellow officer who believed in doing things by the book and had no patience for abuse of power. For Officer Reynolds, the clock was already ticking down to the moment when the handcuffs he had just placed on Lisa would instead be closing around his own wrists. Inside the police cruiser, Lisa struggled to control her breathing. The handcuffs bit into her wrists and her throat throbbed where Officer Reynolds had grabbed her. Through the window, she could see people with their phones out recording everything. A strange mix of humiliation and relief washed over her. Humiliation at being treated like a criminal in front of strangers. Relief that at least there were witnesses. Officer Reynolds sat in the driver's seat, not looking back at her. His shoulders rose and fell with heavy breaths as he radioed in. "Dispatch, I've got one in custody. Female, mid-30s, resisting arrest and attempting to assault an officer." Lisa's jaw dropped. "That's not true!" she cried out, even though she knew he wasn't listening. "I never resisted. I never touched you." Reynolds ignored her, continuing his false report, requesting backup for transport and processing. Situation is under control. The radio crackled. Copy that, Officer Reynolds. Officer Patel is 5 minutes out. Outside, the crowd had grown. Raj, still filming, had moved closer to the police car, trying to get a clear shot of Lisa through the window. The two young women who had stopped their car were now talking to the elderly couple, comparing videos on their phones. A few more cars had pulled over, drawn by the unusual number of people gathered at what appeared to be a routine traffic stop. Reynolds finally turned to look at Lisa through the mesh divider. His expression was cold, calculating. She saw something in his eyes that scared her more than his earlier aggression. A deliberate, focused determination. He was planning something. "You're in serious trouble," he said, his voice eerily calm now. "Resisting arrest, attempting to grab my weapon, threatening an officer. None of that happened." Lisa interrupted, her voice cracking. "The cameras will show that. Your body cam, the dash cam—" A fleeting look of uncertainty crossed Reynolds's face at the mention of cameras, but it quickly hardened again. "It's your word against mine. And who do you think they'll believe? A nurse with a record or a decorated officer?"
Lisa stared at him in disbelief.
"I don't have a record. I've never been arrested in my life." Reynolds smiled slightly. "We'll see about that." He stepped out of the car, closing the door firmly behind him. Through the window, Lisa watched him pace a few steps away, his back to the gathering crowd as he pulled something from his pocket. She couldn't see what he was doing, but the witnesses could. Raj zoomed in with his phone camera, capturing Reynolds as he deliberately scuffed his uniform and messed up his previously neat appearance. The officer then bent down, picking up Lisa's work ID that had fallen during the struggle and tucked it partially into his belt near his holster. "He's planting evidence," Raj called out to the others filming. "Did you see that? He's setting her up." The elderly man, a retired high school principal named Frank Wilson, stepped forward. "Officer, we all saw what really happened here. This isn't right." Reynolds turned sharply, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon before he caught himself. "Sir, step back. This doesn't concern you." "I think it concerns all of us," Frank replied, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "When an officer abuses his power, it's everyone's business." Reynolds' face flushed with anger. "I said step back. This is an active arrest scene. Interfere and you'll be joining her." Just then, another police car pulled up, lights flashing but no siren. Officer Kim Patel stepped out, quickly assessing the unusual scene. The crowd of bystanders all holding up phones, Reynolds' disheveled appearance, the visible tension in the air. "What's going on here, Reynolds?" she asked, approaching cautiously. Reynolds straightened up, his demeanor shifting instantly to professional. "Got a combative subject. Pulled her over for an illegal lane change and a broken taillight. When I asked for her ID, she got aggressive, tried to grab my weapon." Patel's eyes narrowed slightly. Something about this didn't add up. Reynolds was known at the station for being by the book, sometimes overly rigid but not prone to messy arrests. "She's secure in the vehicle?" Patel asked. "Affirmative. Cuffed and contained." Patel nodded, glancing at the crowd of witnesses. "And all these people saw this go down?" Before Reynolds could answer, Raj stepped forward. "Officer, we have videos of what really happened. He attacked her for no reason. She was cooperating." Reynolds cut in quickly. "They only saw part of it. They didn't see her reaching for my gun." One of the young women who had stopped their car, a law student named Tina Chen, spoke up. "That's not true. I have the whole thing on video from when she was still in her car. She never reached for anything except her license and registration." Patel looked between the witnesses and Reynolds, her face unreadable. "Reynolds, let me speak with you privately for a moment." The two officers stepped a few paces away. Lisa watched through the window, her heart pounding. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could see Reynolds gesturing emphatically while Patel stood with her arms crossed, occasionally shaking her head. Inside her pocket, Patel's hand was wrapped around her phone, which was recording their conversation. She had learned early in her career to document interactions with certain colleagues, Reynolds being one of them. "Tom, this doesn't look good," she said quietly. "We've got multiple witnesses contradicting your story." "They didn't see everything," Reynolds insisted. "I know what happened. She was resisting, became combative." "Your body cam working today?" Patel interrupted. Reynolds' hand went instinctively to the small camera on his chest. "Of course, and the dash cam. Everything's working fine, he snapped. Look, are you questioning me or helping me process this arrest? Patel held his gaze steadily. I'm trying to understand the situation before we escalate it further. Let me talk to her. Without waiting for his response, she walked over to the cruiser and opened the back door where Lisa sat. Ma'am, I'm Officer Patel. Are you injured? Do you need medical attention? Lisa looked up, tears streaming down her face. My throat hurts. He grabbed me through the window and started choking me with my collar. I wasn't resisting, I swear. I was getting out of the car like he asked. Patel nodded, her expression professional but not unkind. Can you tell me exactly what happened from the beginning? As Lisa recounted the events, Patel listened carefully, occasionally glancing back at Reynolds, who stood watching them, his posture stiff and defensive. When Lisa finished, Patel stepped away from the car, closing the door gently. I need to check something, she told Reynolds, walking to his patrol car. Give me a minute. Reynolds followed her. What are you doing? Reviewing the dashcam footage. His face paled slightly. That can wait until we get back to the station. No, I think we need to see it now. Patel's tone left no room for argument as she slid into the driver's seat and accessed the camera system. The cruiser's computer screen showed the entire traffic stop from the beginning. Lisa pulling over properly, Reynolds approaching aggressively, the conversation through the window, and then the sudden, unprovoked escalation when Reynolds reached in and grabbed Lisa by the collar. There was no resistance, no reaching for his weapon, nothing that matched Reynolds' story. Patel watched silently, her expression growing darker by the second. When the video ended, she sat still for a moment, processing what she had seen. Tom, she said finally, her voice quiet but firm. You need to uncuff her and let her go, now. Reynolds stared at her in disbelief. What are you talking about? She assaulted an officer! That's not what the video shows, and you know it. Patel stepped out of the car, standing face to face with Reynolds. What it shows is you assaulting a civilian who was complying with your orders. You're taking her side? Reynolds hissed, keeping his voice low but intense. Over a fellow officer? I'm upholding the law, Patel replied. That's the job, remember? Their standoff was interrupted by the sound of another police vehicle approaching. Sergeant David Torres stepped out, his expression grim. Someone at the station had already seen one of the witness videos posted online and alerted him to the situation. Officers, he greeted them, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp. Update me, Patel spoke first. Sergeant, I've reviewed the dashcam footage of this arrest. It contradicts Officer Reynolds' account of what happened. The suspect, she paused, correcting herself. The civilian was complying and did not resist or attempt to assault Officer Reynolds. Torres looked at Reynolds, whose face had gone from pale to flushed. Is this true, Reynolds? No, sir. The camera angle doesn't show everything. She was combative, threatened me. I'd like to see this footage myself, Torres cut in, walking to Reynolds' cruiser. The crowd of witnesses had grown quieter, watching the officers with intense interest. Raj had stopped filming and was now showing his video to some of the others, their heads huddled together over his phone screen. Inside the police car, Lisa sat with her eyes closed, praying this nightmare would end soon. She thought of her empty apartment waiting for her, the patients she had cared for earlier that day, the normal life that had been upended in the space of 20 minutes. Would she have a job tomorrow? Would she have a record? Would anyone believe her side of the story? The door opened, startling her. Sergeant Torres stood there, his face solemn. Ma'am, I'm going to remove these handcuffs. I apologize for what happened here today. Lisa barely dared to believe what she was hearing as Torres helped her out of the car and unlocked the handcuffs. Her wrists were red and raw, and she rubbed them gently, looking around in confusion. Officer Patel approached with a bottle of water. You should drink something. Are you okay to stand? Lisa nodded, taking the water gratefully. What happens now? She asked, her voice still hoarse from the assault. Torres glanced over to where Reynolds stood, now visibly agitated as he argued with another officer who had just arrived. Now, Torres said, turning back to Lisa, we make this right. Officer Reynolds couldn't believe what was happening. He watched in stunned silence as Sergeant Torres removed the handcuffs from Lisa's wrists and offered her a tissue for her tears. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He had been an officer for 7 years. His word was supposed to mean something. Reynolds, your weapon and badge, now. Torres's voice cut through his thoughts like a knife. Sir? Reynolds blinked, not fully processing the command. What are you talking about? Torres stepped closer, his voice low but firm. I said surrender your weapon and badge. You're being placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. The small crowd of bystanders had fallen silent, watching the scene unfold with a mixture of shock and satisfaction. Raj continued filming, making sure to capture every moment. This is ridiculous, Reynolds hissed, glancing nervously at the onlookers. Can we discuss this back at the station? Not in front of... No, Torres cut him off. This ends now. What I saw on that dashcam footage was a clear violation of department policy and the law. Hand them over. Reynolds' face flushed red as the reality of his situation began to sink in. His hand hovered protectively over his holster. Based on a video that doesn't show the whole story. She was resisting. That's enough! Torres's patience had run out. Officer Patel, please escort Officer Reynolds to your vehicle and secure his weapon. Patel stepped forward, her expression professionally neutral, though her eyes were hard. Tom, don't make this worse than it already is. For a tense moment, Reynolds looked like he might refuse. His eyes darted between Torres, Patel, Lisa, and the watching crowd. Then his shoulders slumped, and with trembling fingers he unhooked his holster. As Patel led Reynolds away, Torres turned to Lisa. Ma'am, we're going to need your statement. Would you prefer to do that here or at the station? We can also have an ambulance take you to the hospital first to document your injuries. Lisa touched her throat gingerly, feeling the tender spots where Reynolds' grip had left marks. I think I should go to the hospital, she said, her voice still raspy. But I don't want to go in an ambulance. Can I drive myself? Torres shook his head. I'm afraid your car will need to remain here as part of the investigation scene. We can have an officer drive you in your car, or you can ride with me. I'll take her, a voice offered. It was Tina, the law student who had stopped to record the incident. I'm heading toward Memorial Hospital anyway. Lisa looked at her gratefully. Thank you. I'd appreciate that. Torres nodded. That works. Officer Chen will accompany you to take your statement at the hospital. He gestured to a young officer who had recently arrived at the scene. We'll need your contact information before you leave. As Lisa provided her details to Officer Chen, she noticed Reynolds sitting in the back of Patel's cruiser, staring straight ahead with a hollow expression. The sight gave her no satisfaction. Despite everything he had done, she felt only a deep sadness that someone entrusted with protecting the public could abuse that power so easily. Across the street, Frank and his wife Betty, the elderly couple who had witnessed the entire incident, approached Sergeant Torres. Officer, Frank said, we saw everything. That young lady did nothing wrong. We have it all on video. Torres nodded. Thank you, sir. That footage will be very helpful for our investigation. Would you be willing to provide a statement? Absolutely, Betty replied firmly. What that man did was disgusting. He should never wear a badge again. While Torres collected contact information from the witnesses, Raj approached Lisa, who was gathering her belongings from her car with Tina's help. Hey, he said gently. I'm Raj. I recorded what happened. I've already uploaded it, and it's getting shared like crazy. People need to see this stuff. Lisa gave him a tired smile. Thank you. I don't even want to think about what might have happened if you and everyone else hadn't been here. Raj nodded solemnly. That's why we have to keep filming. It's the only way things change. At the hospital an hour later, Lisa sat on an examination table as a doctor gently examined the bruising on her neck and wrists. Officer Chen waited patiently outside, giving her privacy during the examination. These marks are consistent with the account you gave, the doctor said, photographing the injuries for medical records. You're going to have some pain and swelling for a few days, but there doesn't appear to be any serious damage to your trachea. Lisa nodded, wincing as the doctor pressed lightly on a particularly tender spot. I keep thinking about how much worse it could have been, she said quietly. The doctor paused, meeting her eyes. Unfortunately, I've seen worse. You were lucky to have witnesses. Many aren't. After the examination, Officer Chen came in to take Lisa's statement. Unlike Reynolds, Chen was patient and thorough, recording every detail of the incident from Lisa's perspective. What happens now? Lisa asked when they had finished. Chen closed her notebook. The department will conduct an internal investigation, but given the video evidence and witness statements, I expect this to move to a criminal investigation quickly. You should speak with a lawyer as soon as possible. Criminal? Lisa echoed. You mean Officer Reynolds could face charges? Assault, battery, filing a false report, abuse of power under color of authority. Yes, he could face several charges, Chen confirmed. And you would have grounds for a civil suit against both him and potentially the department. The thought hadn't even occurred to Lisa until that moment. She had been so focused on clearing her name that she hadn't considered seeking justice beyond that. Meanwhile, back at the police station, Reynolds sat in an interview room, his face pale and drawn. His union representative sat beside him, whispering urgently in his ear as Sergeant Torres and Lieutenant Wilson prepared to question him. Tom, Torres began, before we start the formal interview, I want to give you one chance to tell us exactly what happened today. The unvarnished truth. Reynolds stared at the table, avoiding eye contact. I want to see the dashcam footage first. Torres exchanged glances with Wilson before nodding. Fair enough. He played the video on a laptop, turning the screen so Reynolds could see. The room fell silent as they watched the traffic stop unfold. Lisa complying with all instructions. Reynolds escalating the situation without provocation. The moment he reached through the window and grabbed her by the collar. When it ended, Reynolds continued staring at the now black screen, his jaw working silently. There's more, Torres said quietly. Your body camera footage. The witness videos. Multiple angles, Tom, and they all show the same thing. Reynolds finally looked up, his eyes hollow. I don't remember it happening like that. His union rep sighed heavily. Tom, I need to advise you to stop talking. Right now. But Reynolds seemed not to hear him. She was arguing about the taillight, questioning my authority. I felt threatened. Threatened? Wilson repeated incredulously. By a woman sitting in her car with her seatbelt on, hands visible, speaking calmly. You don't understand the pressure we're under, Reynolds insisted, his voice rising. Every traffic stop could be your last. One moment of hesitation and you're dead. Torres leaned forward. Tom, I've been on the force for 22 years. I know the pressures. But what I saw in that video wasn't an officer fearing for his safety. It was an officer losing control. What's going to happen to me? Reynolds asked, the reality of his situation finally seeming to sink in. That depends on several factors, Wilson said, his tone professional but cold, including whether you're honest with us now. Back at the hospital, Lisa was finishing up the paperwork for her release when her phone rang. It was her supervisor from the hospital, calling to check on her after seeing a news report about the incident. Lisa, I just saw what happened. Are you all right? Her boss asked, genuine concern in her voice. I'm okay, Lisa assured her, touched by the call, a little banged up but nothing serious. Take all the time you need. Your job is secure, and the hospital's legal team has offered their services if you need them. Tears welled in Lisa's eyes at this unexpected support. Thank you. That means more than you know. As she ended the call, Tina appeared at the doorway. Ready to go? I can drive you home. Lisa nodded gratefully. More than ready. They walked through the hospital corridors in companionable silence until they reached the parking lot. The evening sky had darkened to deep blue and the first stars were becoming visible. I keep thinking about Officer Reynolds, Lisa said suddenly. What makes someone do something like that? Tina considered the question seriously. Power without accountability is dangerous. Some people can handle it, some can't. The system has protected bad officers for so long that some of them think they're untouchable. Do you think anything will actually happen to him? Lisa asked. Or will he just get transferred to another department? Not this time, Tina said with certainty. Too many witnesses, too much evidence. And with Sergeant Torres taking immediate action, it shows there are good officers who won't tolerate this behavior. As they reached Tina's car, Lisa's phone buzzed with a news alert. She opened it to find a video of Sergeant Torres giving a press statement in front of the police station. Today, one of our officers violated the trust placed in him by this community, Torres was saying, his expression grave. Let me be clear. This department does not tolerate abuse of power or excessive force. The officer in question has been relieved of duty pending a full investigation, and we are cooperating fully with the district attorney's office as they review this case for potential criminal charges. Lisa and Tina watched the statement in silence. When it ended, Tina squeezed Lisa's shoulder gently. See? It's already starting. The wheels of justice are turning, Lisa nodded, feeling a strange mix of emotions, relief that the truth was coming out, anxiety about what lay ahead, and a surprising determination that had begun to form inside her. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about making sure what happened to her wouldn't happen to someone else. Let's go, she said, climbing into Tina's car. I have a feeling tomorrow is going to be a very long day. As they drove away from the hospital, neither of them noticed the news van pulling into the parking lot, looking for the woman at the center of the viral police brutality video that was now dominating social media across the country. Lisa woke up the next morning to the sound of her phone buzzing nonstop. She had turned off the ringer sometime around midnight, after the 20th call from an unknown number. Squinting at the screen, she saw dozens of missed calls, text messages, and social media notifications. The video of her encounter with Officer Reynolds had gone viral overnight. She sat up slowly, wincing at the pain in her neck and shoulders. The bruises had darkened, creating a purple ring where Reynolds's grip had tightened around her collar. She touched them gently, still hardly believing that yesterday had actually happened. A text from Tina flashed on her screen. Turn on the news. Channel 8. Lisa reached for the remote and switched on her small bedroom TV. A reporter stood outside the police station, looking somber, what many are calling a clear case of police brutality. The officer involved, Thomas Reynolds, is facing potential criminal charges after multiple videos showed him assaulting nurse Lisa Johnson during what should have been a routine traffic stop. According to Police Chief Michael Hernandez, who issued a statement early this morning, Officer Reynolds has been officially suspended without pay pending the outcome of both internal and criminal investigations. The screen cut to footage of the police chief at a press conference. What happened yesterday does not represent the values or training of our police department, Chief Hernandez said firmly. We hold our officers to the highest standards of conduct, and when those standards are not met, there must be swift and appropriate consequences. Lisa's phone rang again. This time it was her brother Danny. Lisa, are you okay? I just saw the news. Why didn't you call me? His voice was tight with worry. I'm okay, Danny, she assured him, though her voice still sounded rough. It all happened so fast, and by the time I got home last night, I was just exhausted. I'm coming over, he said, in a tone that brooked no argument. And I'm bringing breakfast, Lisa smiled weakly. Thanks. I could use the company. After hanging up, she checked her emails. Among the many messages from concerned colleagues and friends was one from a lawyer named Patricia Wong, offering to represent her pro bono in any civil action against Officer Reynolds and the police department. There were also several interview requests from news outlets. Lisa was still trying to process it all when her doorbell rang. It was too early for Danny to have arrived, and she hadn't buzzed anyone into her building. Cautiously, she approached the door and looked through the peephole. Standing in the hallway was a tall man in a suit, looking professional, but not unfriendly. Lisa opened the door a crack, keeping the chain on. Ms. Johnson, I'm Ryan Moore from the district attorney's office, the man said, showing her his credentials. I apologize for coming by unannounced, but we're moving quickly on this case, and I wanted to speak with you personally. Lisa hesitated, then undid the chain. Come in, I was just making coffee. In her small kitchen, she poured coffee for them both while Moore explained why he was there. The DA has reviewed the evidence and feels we have grounds for criminal charges against Officer Reynolds, he explained. Multiple counts, actually. Assault and battery, filing a false police report, official misconduct, and civil rights violations. Lisa's hands trembled slightly as she set the mugs on the table. That was fast, Moore nodded. Cases like this usually take longer, but the evidence here is overwhelming. Multiple video angles, immediate testimony from witnesses, the dash cam footage, even Reynolds' own body camera. Plus the fact that Sergeant Torres took action on the spot gives us a strong foundation. What happens next? Lisa asked. Reynolds will be formally charged this afternoon. There will be an arraignment and then... A knock at the door interrupted him. Lisa excused herself and found Danny outside carrying a bag of groceries and wearing a worried expression. Who's the suit? He whispered as she let him in. District Attorney, she whispered back. They're pressing charges against Reynolds. Danny's eyes widened. Good, I hope they throw the book at him. After introductions, Moore continued explaining the legal process while Danny quietly made breakfast in the kitchen, shooting concerned glances at his sister every few minutes. The department has already approached us about a potential plea deal, Moore said. Reynolds would plead guilty to lesser charges in exchange for a lighter sentence. Lisa frowned. What do you think about that? Moore hesitated. Honestly, I think we have a strong enough case to pursue the full charges. But ultimately that decision will involve your input as well. I need to think about it, Lisa said. This isn't just about me. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to someone else. Moore nodded approvingly. Take your time. We're not making any deals today. He handed her his card. Call me anytime with questions. And fair warning. There's a small army of reporters camped outside your building. I can help you leave through the service entrance if you need to go out. After Moore left, Lisa and Danny ate breakfast while watching more news coverage of the incident. The story had caught national attention, with commentators debating police training, accountability, and systemic issues. I never wanted to be the center of something like this, Lisa said quietly as footage of her being pulled through her car window played on the screen. Danny squeezed her hand. I know, but you're handling it with grace, and maybe some good will come from it. Later that morning, Lisa's phone rang again. It was Officer Patel. Ms. Johnson, I wanted to update you personally, Patel said. Reynolds is being charged today. I'll be testifying against him. Lisa was surprised. Isn't that difficult? He was your colleague. He betrayed everything the badge stands for, Patel replied firmly. There's no conflict in my mind. But that's not the only reason I called. We've been reviewing Reynolds' arrest record and we found some concerning patterns. Lisa sat up straighter. What kind of patterns? Multiple complaints of excessive force, primarily against women and people of color. Most were dismissed due to lack of evidence, but in light of what happened to you, we're reopening those cases. A chill ran down Lisa's spine. How many? 11 over the past 3 years, Patel said gravely. Your case could help bring justice for others too. After hanging up, Lisa sat in stunned silence. 11 other people had tried to speak up about Reynolds and no one had listened. If there hadn't been so many witnesses and videos of her incident, would she have been dismissed too? The thought strengthened her resolve. When Patricia Wong, the lawyer who had emailed earlier, called to discuss representation, Lisa agreed to meet with her that afternoon. At the police station, Reynolds sat alone in a small room waiting to be processed. His union representative had stepped out to take a call, leaving him with his thoughts. Through the window in the door, he could see his former colleagues walking past, some averting their eyes, others staring with undisguised contempt. How had it all gone so wrong? Just 2 days ago, he had been Officer Reynolds, respected and feared. Now he was about to be charged like a common criminal. His career was over, his reputation destroyed, possibly his freedom as well. The door opened and Lieutenant Wilson entered with a folder. It's time, Reynolds. The DA is here to formally charge you. Reynolds looked up, a last flicker of defiance in his eyes. This isn't fair. One mistake shouldn't erase 7 years of service. Wilson's expression hardened. One mistake? We've spent the morning reviewing your record. This wasn't an isolated incident, was it? Reynolds said nothing, but his gaze dropped to the floor. I've been a cop for 25 years, Wilson continued. I've seen good officers make bad calls under pressure. But what you did to that woman wasn't a bad call. It was an abuse of power. And it's officers like you who make the public distrust all of us. As Reynolds was led out to face the charges, news cameras flashed outside the station. The story was evolving from a single incident into something larger, a referendum on police accountability and the systems that had allowed Reynolds to remain on the force despite previous complaints. Across town, Lisa sat in Patricia Wong's office surrounded by boxes of case files. These are all complaints against Reynolds, Wong explained. Most were dismissed, but they show a clear pattern of behavior. With your case breaking through, these other victims might finally get justice too. Lisa looked at the names on the files, thinking about the people behind them. I want to help. Whatever it takes. Wong smiled. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Now about your civil case, I think we should name both Reynolds and the department. There's evidence they knew about his behavior and failed to act. Will that be harder to win? Lisa asked. Yes, but it could lead to real policy changes. Sometimes money is the only language institutions understand. Hit them in the budget and suddenly they find the will to implement reforms. As they discussed strategy, Lisa's phone buzzed with a news alert. She opened it to see Reynolds being led into court in handcuffs, looking small and defeated in a suit that seemed too big for him. The image gave her no satisfaction. Instead, she felt a complex mix of emotions: relief that justice was being served, anger that it had taken so long, and determination that her case would help others. That evening, Lisa received another visitor, Sergeant Torres. He came not in an official capacity, but as a concerned human being. "I wanted to see how you're doing," he said simply when she invited him in, "and to apologize on behalf of the department." "We failed you." "You didn't fail me," Lisa corrected him. "You took action when it mattered. If you hadn't reviewed that footage on the spot," Torres nodded grimly. "Still, Reynolds should never have been in a position to hurt you. The warning signs were there." "Officer Patel told me about the other complaints," Lisa said. "Yes, we're implementing changes already. Body cameras will now be reviewed randomly each week. Complaint procedures are being overhauled. It's not enough, but it's a start." As Torres was leaving, he paused at the door. "The other officers wanted me to tell you something. What you're doing, pursuing this case, speaking out, it helps the good cops too. We need people like you to hold us accountable. It makes all of us better." After he left, Lisa stood at her window looking out at the city lights. For the first time since the incident, she felt something like hope. The system was broken in many ways, but there were people inside it and outside it fighting for change. Her phone buzzed again, another news alert. The headline read, "Officer charged in assault case. Police chief announces sweeping reforms." It was just the beginning, Lisa knew. There would be hard days ahead. Testimony to give, depositions, media pressure, and the emotional toll of reliving the trauma. But standing in her apartment surrounded by evidence that justice was possible, she felt ready to face whatever came next. The path forward was clear now. This wasn't just about one bad officer or one traumatic traffic stop. It was about something much bigger: the slow, difficult work of transforming a system that had protected the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable for far too long. 6 months had passed since that fateful traffic stop. The bruises on Lisa's neck had long since faded, but the impact of what happened that day had spread like ripples in a pond, touching lives far beyond her own. Lisa stood at the courthouse steps, taking a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. The weight that had sat on her shoulders for half a year was finally lifting. Inside her purse was the settlement agreement, signed just an hour ago. Her civil case against the police department had been resolved without going to trial. "You did it," Patricia Wong said beside her, briefcase in hand and a satisfied smile on her face. "The largest settlement in the city's history for a police misconduct case. And more importantly, the policy changes we demanded." Lisa nodded, still processing the magnitude of what they'd accomplished. "I keep thinking about all the other people who tried to speak up about Reynolds before me. If I hadn't had all those witnesses and videos—" "But you did," Patricia reminded her gently. "And you used that advantage to help everyone, not just yourself." It was true. The settlement included mandatory body cameras for all officers with automatic uploading to secure servers, a civilian oversight board with actual power to discipline officers, revised use of force policies, and funding for mental health professionals to respond to certain types of calls instead of armed officers. "Ms. Johnson." "Can we get a statement?" a reporter called out, noticing Lisa on the steps. Others quickly gathered, cameras ready. Lisa had become more comfortable with the media attention over the months. She stepped forward, Patricia at her side. "Today isn't about money," she began, her voice clear and confident in a way it hadn't been 6 months ago. "It's about accountability and change. No settlement can erase what happened to me, but if these new policies prevent even one person from experiencing something similar, then something good has come from it." A reporter raised her hand. "What about Officer Reynolds? His criminal trial starts next week. Will you be testifying?" Lisa nodded. "Yes. The truth needs to be heard." After answering a few more questions, Lisa and Patricia walked away from the courthouse. The air felt lighter somehow, the sun a bit brighter. "What will you do now?" Patricia asked. "Take a vacation? You've certainly earned it." Lisa smiled. "Actually, I start classes next week. Law school." Patricia's eyebrows shot up in surprise, then she grinned. "Really? That's wonderful. I had no idea you were considering it." Neither did I until all this happened, Lisa admitted. But working with you, seeing how the law can be used to create real change, it feels right. Across town in a small apartment that was all he could afford after losing his job, Tom Reynolds sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the suit laid out for his upcoming trial. His hair had grown longer, his face thinner. The confident swagger that had once defined his movement was gone, replaced by a wary hunch. His phone rang. His lawyer, probably with last-minute preparations for the trial. Reynolds let it go to voicemail. What was there to say? The evidence against him was overwhelming. His only hope was to show remorse, to plead for leniency. The strange thing was, over these 6 months of isolation and reflection, genuine remorse had begun to take root. At first, he'd been consumed with anger and self-pity. But as weeks turned to months, he'd started to see himself through the eyes of others. The woman he'd assaulted, the colleagues who'd testified against him, the public who'd watched the videos in horror. He picked up a folded newspaper from his nightstand. The headline read, "Former officer's trial to begin Monday. Defense expected to seek plea deal." Below was a recent photo of Lisa Johnson speaking at a police reform rally, looking confident and purposeful. Reynolds had asked his lawyer to pass along an apology letter to her. He didn't know if she'd received it, or if it had meant anything if she had. Some things couldn't be undone with words on paper. His phone rang again. This time he answered. "Tom, we need to talk about the plea offer," his lawyer said without preamble. "The DA is willing to drop 2 of the charges if you plead guilty to assault and filing a false report. You'd serve at least 2 years, but it beats the potential 7 you're facing at trial." Reynolds closed his eyes. What about the other cases? The old complaints? The statute of limitations has expired on some. Others don't have the same level of evidence as the Johnson case. They're focusing on the strongest case first. "I'll take the plea," Reynolds said quietly. "I don't want to put anyone through a trial." It was a small act of decency, perhaps the beginning of his own long road to redemption. Meanwhile, at the hospital where Lisa still worked part-time while attending law school, her colleagues had organized a small celebration for her. "To Lisa," her supervisor toasted, raising a paper cup of sparkling cider, "who showed us all what courage looks like." Lisa blushed, uncomfortable with the praise. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," an older nurse named Gloria shook her head firmly. "Most people would have taken a quick settlement and tried to put it behind them. You pushed for real changes." After the party, Lisa checked her watch. She had an appointment to keep. Grabbing her coat, she headed to a small community center across town where a support group was meeting for the first time. Inside, a circle of chairs was arranged in a plain room. Some were already occupied by people with stories similar to Lisa's. Individuals who had experienced police misconduct but hadn't had the advantage of multiple videos and witnesses. "Welcome, everyone," Lisa said as she took her seat in the circle. "Thank you for coming. I know how hard it can be to talk about these experiences." A young man across from her nodded. "I filed a complaint 3 years ago. No one believed me. When I saw your story on the news, it was the first time I felt like maybe I wasn't crazy." One by one, they shared their stories. Some had suffered worse physical injuries than Lisa. All carried emotional scars, but there was something powerful in the sharing, in the simple act of being believed. "What happened to us isn't the end of our stories," Lisa told the group. "We can use our experiences to create change. That's why I've asked Officer Patel and Sergeant Torres to join us next week, to build a dialogue between the community and officers who want to see reform too." The next Monday, Lisa sat in the courtroom as Reynolds entered his guilty plea. She watched the man who had assaulted her stand before the judge, diminished and humbled. He turned once briefly, and their eyes met across the courtroom. In that moment, something passed between them. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement. A recognition of the human behind the headlines. When the judge asked if she wanted to make a victim impact statement, Lisa approached the podium. "What happened to me that day changed my life," she began. "At first it was all trauma and pain. I was afraid to drive, afraid of police, afraid to go out alone. But over time it became something else too, a calling. I realized that my case wasn't unique, just unusually well documented." She paused, looking directly at Reynolds. "I don't hate you. Hate doesn't fix anything. But I do want you to understand the ripple effects of your actions, not just on me, but on public trust, on your fellow officers who do their jobs with integrity, on the entire system of justice. When she finished speaking, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. The judge sentenced Reynolds to 3 years, with possibility of parole after serving 18 months. It was less than the maximum possible sentence, but Reynolds had shown remorse and cooperated with investigations into other misconduct cases. Outside the courthouse, reporters again gathered around Lisa. "How do you feel about the sentence?" one asked. Lisa considered the question carefully. "Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about repair. The sentence matters less to me than the changes happening in the department. The conversations starting in communities, the new policies being implemented." Later that evening, Lisa sat on her small balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Her phone buzzed with a text from Raj, who had become a good friend. "Just saw the news. You're amazing. Still on for coffee tomorrow?" She smiled and texted back, "Absolutely." Life had found a new rhythm. 3 days a week at the hospital doing the work she'd always loved. 3 days at law school preparing for a future she'd never imagined. 1 day leading the support group, which had grown to include allies from the police department working alongside community members for change. The trauma would always be part of her story, but it no longer defined her. In its place was purpose, community, and an unexpected sense of peace. She opened her laptop to finish an assignment for her constitutional law class. The professor had asked them to write about a personal experience related to civil rights. Lisa's fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before she began to type. "6 months ago, I was pulled over for a traffic violation that didn't happen. What followed changed not just my life but an entire system." This is that story. In police academies across the country, cadets now watch the video of what happened to Lisa, alongside interviews with Reynolds from prison, as part of a mandatory training on abuse of power. In the city where it happened, complaints of excessive force had dropped by 30% since the new policies were implemented. The system wasn't fixed. No single case could accomplish that. But cracks had formed in the wall of silence, letting in light where darkness had prevailed. And in that light, change was growing, nurtured by the courage of one woman who refused to let injustice have the final word. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Lisa closed her laptop and smiled. Tomorrow was a new day, with new challenges and new opportunities to make a difference. She was ready.